Look around you. You've made it to the belly of the beast. Congratulations. Very few come this far.
What kind of movie is it? Horror?
Honey, you ain't going to stop in a horror movie.
Working on X and then working on Pearl and then the complete, surprise of the success of these movies really kind of came out of nowhere. We went to New Zealand and we filmed these movies, and I really didn't think much of it after that. I put my heart and my soul into it, but I really didn't think anyone would ever see it. And then people did see it, and they really responded to it. Y'all might as well go home, because I just fucking nailed that.
She knows this character clearly. She's been playing her or some version of her for three movies.
And so it was interesting to see this parallel start to kind of exist between my own life and the trajectory of my own career that I've been working on, and then to also experience that as well with what Maxine and Pearl were striving for.
How's it feel being someone else?
Good.
I've always found her to be such a fascinating actress to watch, and risky and bold and wonderful. And so I was imagining her through the piece.
She's a very, very fearless actress.
Get in my way again and you're fucking dead! You hear me?
She's extremely committed, willing to make strong choices that don't feel like over-the-top choices. They feel like grounded choices, but are very, very connected.
She switches into this character. It's kind of like, I guess Maxine in a way is kind of like part Mia and part Maxine. How come you waking up early?
I have a fit-in for a film.
Oh yeah? Guy girl or girl girl?
A real movie.
And I think that it's kind of the coolest way to execute the character, because you never know really what to expect. But it also says that some of the nicest people also can be like totally cutthroat if you don't know, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into with them.
I loved X and I loved Pearl. I think I saw them probably both opening weekend. Ty was very much on my radar as a director. And so I actually reached out to him, and we were trying to set up some kind of a meeting, not knowing anything about Maxine. I had no idea that there was going to be a trilogy, or I just was interested in just meeting him and talking to him about movies and, seeing what he was going to do next and seeing if there was any opportunity for us to work together.
When you have someone like Kevin Bacon who signs up to do the movie, it just changes what I think is possible with the film. It gives you that confidence that you need to have when trying to, because we always wanted a great ensemble cast for this movie. And the goal was always to get really exciting, interesting people together and into this world.
Get lost. We'll clean up the mess.
Thanks.
What are agents for?
The picture becomes larger and it becomes more inflated as you start to understand it's not just this one thing.
Maxie! How you doing, baby girl?
Running late, looking for my outfit for tonight.
You want the good news or the bad news?
Bad.
You didn't get the Lizzie Borden music video.
And so for me, that's essentially the genius of Ty.
It was always such a surprise. It was such a treat to, be working with different actors every few days and getting to see what they've prepared and their approach to the work, and just really being pleasantly surprised by what they brought to the table.
We had Kevin, and then Lily was like, I love those movies. I want to be a part of it. She just thought it was cool.
Sorry.
We've all got blood on our hands now.
It's something I've always wanted to do, and this was kind of the culmination of that dream in a sense. And the idea that I got to play this character who's in a movie within a movie is just one small part of what gets to aid Mia's character in her journey. We all get to pop in and bring out different sides of her character, and you just get to come in and have fun for the day.
Ingrid Bergman was my first. She said, "Be yourself. The world worships an original." I really connected with her.
You read it as an actor and you just know it's like a feast for actors, because we're all coming in and doing these sort of small parts, but they're so juicy, all of them, you know. So I was really hooked, and I knew I was going to do it straight away.
I actually had to read the script twice when I first got it, because I flew through the script like immediately, and then I finished it, and I realized that I had read it as a fan. Like I was getting a sneak peek of the third film in the trilogy because I loved the movie so much. And I was like, oh man, I have to go back and read this as an actor because I've just been reading it as a fan. I just want to know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, transitioning from being a full-fledged artist in charge of my universe to being an actor, i.e. a single part of an entire universe, is both relieving and panic-inducing, probably 50-50, I would say, because you have to suddenly trust a bunch of people you've never met.
Is there a way to find out who made this?
Why? What's on it?
None of your business.
So I also really appreciate collaboration. I appreciate that in acting especially, so many of your choices are based on what other people decide to do.
I fucking got it, Puritan 2.
You're actually gonna be in a film I'd watch for once.
And decide to give you. And so that is really nice, and it's a relief, and it is in some ways kind of like jamming with a band. But at the end of the day, you know, you go home and you don't know what's gonna happen to it.
I loved working with all of these actors. I don't think that we could have made Maxine without them. They bring so much to the story. I don't really know where we could have gone without them.
I think, you know, being able to work with Ty in the capacity of him being a writer and a director is invaluable. I mean, he is a true visionary, as we can see, you know, in all the types of films that he makes.
It's more personal if you've written it, and I immediately understand that, and I regard that because, to me, what got me here were the words. And the words were so good, and the world depicted the way it is was so complete. And so I come to the set knowing that I'd like to say and honor what he's written first, no matter what I think.
You're my lawyer, right?
Entertainment lawyer, yes.
Writing is everything. It's just the truth. We have nothing without it. So he just built a glorious world, and he's very centered in it. He knows exactly what he wants out of the scene.
Fascinating how something can look so believable when in reality it's all a facade.
He's a director that we were very collaborative, right from the very beginning, in terms of, I don't know, just thoughts I had about the character and bouncing ideas off of each other, having to do with backstory and the look and the voice and, you know, all those kinds of things. It was really, really, really fun. And
what Ty has done for the genre is so unique and so special, and I was a little surprised Ty wanted to speak to me about it. I was very excited, and when he pitched the story to me, I was like, I'm in. How could I not be in? This is amazing.
I knew from the very first time that I met him and I talked to him what a clear vision he has, and like his attention to detail is just like unparalleled.
I'm an artist. This town is prejudiced against artists, scared of its own shadow when it comes to upsetting the status quo. But I say, if the pearl-clutching moral majority types are going to protest your work, you might as well make it bloody mean something.
All the great filmmakers, Spielberg, he started in horror. Friedkin, horror. Polanski, horror. Like, they all made horror movies. And I think what horror enables you to do is exploit an audience and to get a visceral reaction out of the audience and create something that is completely experiential. And if your filmmaker can do that in a way that resonates with people, it's magic.
You're a fucking movie star. Everything that I've heard and people that I've spoken to, Hollywood and Los Angeles, it's changed a lot since that time.
With this one, it was like, okay, well, it's going to be, you know, mid-'80s, and, you know, we want to kind of take off from where we were in X and venture into some sort of a different filmmaking style and era, kind of.
I feel like the 70s in filmmaking was like kind of a breakthrough sort of golden era of American expressionistic, super grounded and gritty filmmaking in a way that we really had not seen. And in the 80s, I think that all of that got sort of dialed up a little bit, you know? Everything got a little bit more fluffy around the edges, you know? A little bit more colorful.
Ty was talking about trying to dial in what the vibe of this was. It's 1985, but he didn't want it to be, you know, leg warmers and big hair and colorful and happy. And I said to him, what if it's the world of Repo Man? 1984, Emilio Estevez, it's dirty, it's gritty. There are cracks in the sidewalk. There are weeds growing along the sides of the street. It's the dirty Los Angeles, you know, the dirty downtown, the dirty Hollywood that doesn't get portrayed in film as much.
I know a killer actor I was spotting in the hills if you're interested.
I gotta get up early.
Hate going to parties by myself.
And he was particularly interested in these Italian horror films, the giallo genre.
The Puritan is a future classic as far as ultra-violent satanic possession movies go. I mean, not exactly terms of endearment, but in 30 years, we'll see which one has more fans.
And so, you know, we were looking at those. And then it kind of also sort of started to become this thing that was realizing that it was very much kind of like a Brian De Palma sort of thriller on some level.
Obviously, it sort of pays its homage to that sort of 80s horror genre that we know and love.
One of the things that I'm thrilled about in terms of, you know, where I am is that I have gotten a chance to work across a whole lot of different genres. But I do love horror and I do love thrillers. And I think the reason is because the stakes are high, you know, it's life or death.
Oh, no, wait. No. This ain't my call. I could be born. Anything you want. Anything at all. Oh, no, please, turn it off. I don't want to die in here.
Ty is just such a unique filmmaker. I mean, what he's doing and the way that he takes the genre and just heightens it enough, right? And it's just such a fun watch, and I don't know how to explain it. I feel like it's Hollywood in the 80s. So you've got like it's like neon and grit, and it's all the great seedy parts, and it's the height of sex and drugs and cults, and it's this intersection in time and place of ambition and fame and sacrifice.
Name 5 celebrities who got their start in horror movies.
Jamie Lee Curtis, John Travolta, Demi Moore, Brooke Shields, and
Maxine fucking Minx.
You can't make a Hollywood movie without Hollywood. So we had to figure out how to get the backlots, how to get Hollywood Boulevard, how to get the Mann's Chinese Theater, how to get the Hollywood sign.
Actually working on Hollywood Boulevard, I think, was a double-edged sword, where some of it was wonderful because it played as we found it. The sidewalk is there with the terrazzo and the stars in it. You know, there's a theater marquee, the Vine Theater, and we used it as is. And then there were other things that we had to come in with a very heavy hand and change and dress and alter.
It was really fun to kind of just to get a sense of what that world was like then, and you know, all the prep that you do and the research and time thinking about it and reading the scenes out loud, it never really clicks until you're in that kind of environment and you're wearing those costumes with the other people around you, and something just happens. There's just an energy to being in that sort of space that it just really contributes to the scenes a lot.
And it's a very difficult location to work at. Just the logistics of parking, the logistics of traffic and people and things. So I think it was equally wonderful and a bit of a grind as well.
It was amazing to get to shoot on Hollywood Boulevard. By the way, I live blocks from there, so I am always on Hollywood Boulevard. I'm always crossing it. And to be able to shut down the street, it's been years since I've had the opportunity to do that, but to experience it was such a throwback in time from the 80s with the cars, with the posters, with the lights, it was such an iconic experience.
Good evening, everyone. This is, as I told Ty, this is the exclamation point to our shoot here in Hollywood. Obviously, the main thing here that Grauman's stressed to us is these tiles. So, when we move into the forecourt, please keep all the heavy equipment either on the sidewalk or on plywood over the prints. So
the Chinese Theater, that's another location that was incredible because it's the real place. We didn't have to recreate anything. The footprints are in the concrete. The building is the building, but at the same time, it's a very costly location to be at, and we really had to show up, unroll our curtain, drop the spotlights, and do our things very quickly, and then get right back out again.
But we rolled in there at midnight or whatever it was after half a day up down at the other end of Hollywood Boulevard, and basically had to have everything in place and turn it on pretty much before we even got there. So that was also a matter of going down there at night, taking a look at what fixtures and the way the theater itself is just lit up on its own, and then deciding what we wanted to get rid of and then what we wanted to augment and change.
There were more things that we wished we could have done to really turn it into the 1985 Mann's Chinese Theater, but we did our best approximation of it, with the time and resources we were actually given.
Being at all of these locations was just really surreal. I never could have imagined I would ever be filming in any of these locations. And being at the Bates Motel, I'd seen Psycho, and it's just bizarre. There's something very eerie to the whole lot still.
Do you know what this is? It's a motel from Psycho.
They filmed a sequel here a few years back, if you can believe it.
I remember when I first came to Universal Studios, I was probably 10. I grew up in Virginia, and my family did a California vacation and doing the tram tour and seeing the Jaws ride and going on Earthquake and being a part of the tourist experience, and then being able to just be around the Psycho house and that's really cool. Now we were there for our movie, and I get to go inside and I get to see the raccoon footprints and the cracks in the wall and just be oh, well, this is a set. This is an old set.
Excuse me. You can't be up there.
I do apologize. I guess my morbid curiosity must have gotten the best of me. You know, a lot of famous killings took place right inside this house right here.
This crazy gig that we have, it's just a gas. It's just, it's such a cliche, but I sometimes really have to pinch myself that I actually get paid to do this, to put on these clothes from the 80s, to have people that are so good at their jobs help to transform you and turn you into a different person. I love it. And then to end up at the end of the day, running up the steps to the Psycho house, which is obviously, one of the most iconic pieces of set decoration and construction that's ever existed. It was just magical.
I mean, this whole day is a dream. This is one of those days where you look around and you go, I'm so happy that I have this gig. This is such a great way, fun way to make a living, and I feel very, very grateful to do it. I'm a huge horror film fan. So much of horror from that point on is, kind of derives directly from Psycho. So it's really great. I'm just sorry we didn't get a chance to see The Shower.
you do the preparations for the scene and you think about it, but nothing can really prepare you for what it's like to actually be there on the day. There's just something, there's an air to it all that's still quite eerie.
Uncharacteristically, because it's not really my thing, and it's not really, I don't think it's really Mia's thing either. She said, you know, we really need to go and have somebody take a picture of us in front of the Bates Motel. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So we went down and someone took a couple of pictures of us with the motel and then with the house in the background. It was a great day.
It was really surreal, the entire experience. It was very meta in many ways. You know, at the end, Maxine says, you know, I just never want it to end. And really, that's how I feel. I never want it to end.
So I'm gonna be making a life cast to your head for the end of the movie. Ever had one done before? No.
At the start of each of the films I've done with Ty, there is very specific conversation that pertains to the era that we're set in, the creative requirements, and the overall visual aesthetic. And we start there in a very broad way, and then we start to narrow it down and narrow it down.
Right away, we were talking about the look, talking about the clothes and the hair and the makeup and the different options that we had for you know, this kind of transformative stuff.
Well, there always is a collaboration, and I always welcome that because I want them to feel good about what we're doing in the makeup trailer. I want them to be inspired by it. I want them to feel good about it. And really, this movie-making process is such a collaboration between so many entities. But with Kevin, it was a great dance, if you will.
In the end, I believe pretty strongly that you have to kind of defer to the actor, ultimately, because that's going to be the person that is going to inhabit this character.
Early 2021, when we started pre-production and prep for X, Ty came to me and said, you know, I want her to have something unique and different, and either like a wine-stained birthmark or like a freckle birthmark. Hand doing it, you would just never get the level of consistency. So Weta Workshop, they did all of my prosthetics for X and for Pearl. And so of course at the beginning they had taken a life cast of Mia so that we could custom build all the prosthetics for her for the Old Lady Pearl makeup. So we had a positive of her face, and we were able to build a vac form, which is a clear plate that sits right over her face, and then I had freckles drilled into that vac form, so every morning she sits in the chair, and at a certain point in the makeup process, I put that vac form on her face and I airbrush over top it, and so that freckle configuration is exactly the same every day. So that takes me about 5 minutes to do with the vac form plate versus 20 minutes hand done. And then not to have the confidence that the freckles are always lined up.
That's a pretty bitchin' scar. How'd you get it? I got shot.
It's a busy film. We thought, honestly, when I first read the script, there's not all that much for me. And then it turned out to like every day I was doing something.
It's quite ambitious. There's a lot of makeup effects gags. And you know, even Labatt, he's got a prosthetic nose that I would put on every time he worked. The bridge of his nose with a scar. So the workload was big. Ty has a very tight working relationship with Justin Raleigh and Fractured. He's worked with them for like 15 plus years. So he said, hey, let's, you know, consider these guys.
We went through their shot list. There was a few things that Weta was going to handle because they had dealt with that on Pearl. And we just kind of went through the list going, okay, is this us? Is this going to be Weta? What's the shared workflow here?
I gotta tell you, I was really excited because I got to have one of the coolest deaths kind of ever, I think, you know.
I got him! I told you I'd get him!
I got to die with having a crucifix pummeled into my eye, and I fall from the Hollywood sign. I mean, come on, that's it. You know?
Let's do that. I don't want to make enemies. Fractured had built this rig, and it's a very complicated rig, but very straightforward as well.
You're gonna get this piece that goes on her eye. It's a nylon material, so it should be very light.
You definitely need something to support the crucifix. You need to make a crucifix that resembles the original crucifix, but lightweight enough that you can put it in the head and it's not going to bounce around.
After that, you can stick this cross into this socket. Okay.
There's so many elements that could go wrong with it.
You know, it was an intense process of the prosthetics kind of coming on, and I guess it was about an hour-long process.
But also we had a really short, narrow time frame to put it on because it's kind of set up between shots. So they'll shoot her up to the point, then we break away. We have 45 minutes or so to put it on, and then the silicone piece that has to line up perfectly on top of that eye, and then of course the crucifix that slides on that. And then we go back, we shoot it.
And so her eye is closed underneath, of course.
I'm just gonna wink at you, Akiko, but I can't. I can only wink at this eye.
But I think like once it was attached and covering my eye, I kind of underestimated, you know, having my sight from good sight from two eyes, and then being in the middle of the night in the dark with like on a ledge and your equilibrium being a little bit off.
I'm working with one eye as a reminder here, so my depth perception really is off. So let's just be really mindful of that.
And doing stunts at the same time, it was a lot.
I know, it's wild, isn't it?
It's so fucked up.
Fractured built it so that the eye was partially opened and the eyeball was skewed a little bit, which adds to the creepy factor. And then, of course, you know, Kevin applied it beautifully, and he's such a master with painting, and so just those blending edges, you know, just it was seamless. And then we get out there and we're around the Hollywood sign, and it's moody lighting, and we've got that very bright blood that that Ty likes to use. And so it was exactly as he had visualized and as I had visualized and fractured, and it was a happy ending.
So creepy, it's so creepy and good, I love it.
And not only was it just a really, really cool way to kind of go out in this kind of film, because Ty is so known for his amazing death scenes, and I'm so grateful I got to have one, but just the actual process and getting to work with Kevin, who's pretty much a genius, and not just with my own prosthetics, but with everyone's in the films. They're outstanding.
I mean, it was as challenging as the other films, but I guess the one thing that was helpful, the one big thing, is that because I've worked with Ty a couple times, I know he's so focused, he's so detail-oriented, so I have a shorthand in understanding that from him.
3, 2, 1, action! Moses.
It's been an insane ride, and ultimately as hard as the other shows, but very, very rewarding ultimately.
Oh, hello. I was like, is this thing on? I'm Jen Yamato. It's my pleasure to bring on down a very special guest. Hold on, it's a little too quiet in here. Let's recap. Let's rewind. Round of applause for Maxine. She's a star. She's a real star. Joining us today, we have a very special guest. We are being broadcast into other Draft House theaters. Hello. Let me bring down writer, director, and editor Ty West. Oh, and special guest. And very special guest. And the most special guest.
She's the only cast member left in town besides me to do press, so we roped her in.
And introduce the lovely lady.
This is Molly. She's in all the movies. She has a couple. She's on Hollywood Boulevard, and then she does a lot of ADR work with her barks. So, but she's tired, but she's the emotional support animal for the remainder of press, right?
That's right. She said yes. So Ty, you have, first of all, congratulations. This has been such an undertaking. I know you have made 3 movies in 4 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, it's been. I mean, I've been working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day since X on these movies. So I think it has been about 4.5 years. So it's very strange. I'm like at the very tail end of it, and I'm trying to figure out what that's going to be like in about 2 weeks when I don't have something to do.
So from X to Pearl to now Maxine, we see this full arc, this trilogy, which is a first for A24, by the way. Can't wait to hear about how easy that was to get greenlit. But from X to Pearl to Maxine, was this always the trajectory, the journey that you saw for this character, Maxine Minx?
No, I had written a movie called X, and that was basically it. I had written a movie, and I sent it to A24 and said, you know, do you think you'd be up for doing this? And they were like, I don't know. This is pretty out there. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I was like, just think about it. And then credit to them, they called me back, and they were like, we thought about it. We actually really want to make it, and let's see what we can do. And that was very exciting, and then COVID happened. And that messed up everything. So we were trying to figure out how we would make the movie, and it needed to be shot in the summer. And we also need to be able to shoot it during COVID, which was very difficult. And so New Zealand became an option because we were never going to make it in time for America's summer, but that the Southern Hemisphere offered us summer and our winter. So we had a little more time to try to figure it out. And New Zealand didn't have COVID. And so we were fortunate enough to get work visas to be able to go down there and make a movie. And so that's what we did. But because it was in the middle of this crazy pandemic, and we were fortunate enough to be able to make a movie, and we were one of the only people like on Earth making a movie at the time, I just felt like it'd be crazy to go there, build Texas and New Zealand, and then just tear it down and go home and sit in our houses. It just felt like we were so fortunate to be there. How do we make as many movies as we can? And I couldn't think of an idea to use the farm in a sequel because everybody dies in X and there's nothing really to do there. But Mia was playing older Pearl, and we could go backwards. So we could take everything that we built and we could like resurrect it from being old and dilapidated into brand new, and we could make a prequel. And I sort of pitched them that idea, and then I also pitched them the idea of a third movie, that if these 2 movies work, we could make a third movie. And I jokingly was like, it could be X, XX, and then XXX, as sort of like how the X porn movie ratings got increasingly more ridiculous over the years. And so that was kind of like the plan, and they were intrigued by it, but I don't think they were totally seriously considering it. But I had to do 2 weeks of quarantine to get into New Zealand, and there's not a lot to do in a hotel room when you can't leave for 2 weeks, so I figured we'd try to write a script. And I asked Mia if she would stay longer, if we could pull it off, and she was excited about that idea, so we would FaceTime and figure out Pearl in those 2 weeks. And then we popped out in New Zealand, and I was able to show them that we had a production plan to do the movies back to back, and they liked the script, and somehow we made the 2 movies. And then it was a waiting game to see if people would like those 2 movies. Thankfully, you guys liked those 2 movies. And so that meant we made a 3rd movie, and now here we are.
Okay, you say that like it's so easy, like and then.
No, it was hard, very difficult the whole time. That's just this. We can't be here all night. That's the summary.
Okay, so at what point in that journey of yours, this creative journey, did you start working on Maxine? Did you start putting the pieces together of the setting, the story, even the locations, specific locations that you wanted in the film?
Well, I knew in the original idea I had before even writing Pearl, I knew it would be the 80s and I knew it would be Hollywood. Like I knew she would make it to Hollywood and it would be a very LA movie. But I didn't really start writing it seriously until the end of post-production on Pearl. So we went to South by Southwest and we premiered X, and then we released this trailer that we told everyone we had made another movie called Pearl. And Pearl was basically done at that point. We had to record the score and mix, and then we were done. And so then that gave me time from then to when Pearl came out in September to write Maxine, so that we could make a teaser, and announce the third movie at Toronto. And so as difficult as that was, it was actually good because it kind of motivated me. It gave me a deadline that I had to do. So I wrote it over that summer between X and Pearl coming out.
In 1985 is the year that you specifically landed on eventually. What was so perfect about that year and all the different forces converging that we see, especially in the beginning when you set it up? But why 1985?
Well, it was going to be the 80s, and then you have to pick a date and you have to pick a time. And for the connective tissue of these movies, besides the through line of the character, it was like cinema and how cinema affects people. And so it's certain kinds of cinema and certain kinds of filmmaking that the characters are doing that the movie is representing in X, and it's a different kind in Pearl. And then it would be a different kind in the third movie, and that was going to be, something that was more reminiscent of the 80s and more reminiscent of like the boom of home video and things like that. But in 1985, there was a tremendous amount of like sort of moral outcry about like censorship and about lyrics and music leading to people killing each other and committing suicide, and horror movies being too violent, or movies being too violent in general, or people having access, kids having access to things they shouldn't have. And so there's this weirdly kind of like puritanical moment in the middle of the 80s in reaction to suddenly things like video nasties in England and things like that. And so that was interesting, and that was sort of like on brand with the thematics of the trilogy. And also in the summer of 1985, there was like there was a serial killer. And so all of that led for a very like rich tapestry of a backdrop for a story like this. Because if I had made it the year before, the backdrop would have been the Olympics, and that's less appropriate. So
if you made it the year before, you wouldn't have St. Elmo's Fire, which came out in 1985.
So you knew the answer. You knew the answer of why we said it then.
That needle drop, just to zero in on it, it's so funny. It lands in, like to have the contrast between the upbeatness of St. Elmo's Fire with Mia, what do you call it? Key fisting Kevin Bacon. Was that like a stroke of genius that just occurred to you one day, this song? Were you looking for something that would strike that balance?
Weirdly enough, that one came about in a strange way. So we had gotten St. Elmo's Fire to be the movie on Hollywood Boulevard, so that's on the Vine Theater marquee. And we would mention Demi Moore in a previous scene. So it was sort of part of the vibe of the movie. I just thought we'd never be able to afford that song. It never even occurred to me to put that song in there. And when I was editing, I had a couple songs in mind, and none of them were working. Like, none of them felt right. And then I just was like, well, we already put St. Elmo's Fire in the movie. It would be the #1 song. And I remember asking my assistant, I was like, he's a young, great guy, and I was like, you don't know who Casey Kasem is, but can you go see if you can find the radio check for when that was the #1 song, which would have been when the movie came out. And that kind of added to the backdrop of the movie being consistent. And we found that, and as soon as we found the Casey Kasem thing, I was like, well, let's try St. Elmo's Fire and keep it all related. And then it worked so well. And then I was like so nervous about how much is this going to cost. And then the weirdest thing happened where the original this is a deep dive here, but the original St. Elmo's Fire track is like kind of stuck in litigation, which tends to happen. So John Parr had like re-records, and it's always great when they have re-records because you can negotiate with the artist. And so here we are with St. Elmo's Fire.
The anniversary version.
Exactly.
I want to ask you to talk about your collaboration now over 3 films with Mia Goth. She's fantastic across all 3 of these films, playing 2 characters, different timelines, and where we see her end up in Maxine is so satisfying. What's satisfying to you about being able to bring that character full circle to where we see her in Maxine at the conclusion of her story?
That's a little bit of one of these questions. It's a very rear view mirror question, which is tough because I'm sort of still in it. But, when I wrote X, and the plan for X was to make a sort of somewhat lowbrow concept of a movie and try to do something highbrow with craft. So to try to bring a certain level of performance or performances from the same actor, special effects makeup, cinematography, music, to really put the craft of filmmaking on display, and to make a movie about people making a movie, to make you think about the way they're making a movie, so you might think about the way I'm making the movie, and that in a way it becomes this sort of celebration of like the craft of filmmaking that I kind of slipped in on you that you didn't know was coming. And so that was the original idea. And then it's quite a thing to play two characters in a movie. And when I first met Mia, she had no idea that that was the plan. So we were talking about the movie as if she was just going to be Maxine. And then I said, hey, I have this idea. What if you played both parts? And she just sort of stopped, and I could see the wheels turning, and then she was like, I could kill that. And I just totally believed her. And that sort of fearlessness and that sort of, she had almost like a chip on her shoulder attitude about like, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to do something bold like this. And then when the idea of Pearl came around, it became an evolution of the craft of performance and things like that, because she was able to do another type of performance related to the previous one and sort of evolve it. And that was very enriching, and that was very cool, and she was obviously just tremendous in that movie. And so when we went to make this movie, the whole goal was to see Maxine, who is the same character as the previous movie, but in the same way old Pearl and young Pearl are very different performances because of different times in her life. It was an opportunity for, I think, Mia to get to do that again, and to see a character that we know, but to see her at a different place and a different time, and to see an evolution of that. And so I think just between the three movies, by the nature of them happening, it's become this like really amazing showcase for like all that she's capable of, and obviously like it's really resonated with people in a very cool way, and to the point that people like dress up like her for Halloween and stuff now. And so it's very surreal, and it's very flattering, and I'm like proud to have something to do with that. But really, it's like it was like her time to be able to like show up, and she did. And people are gonna have even more costumes to wear this Halloween. You're gonna see so many Maxines, I think. I'm looking forward to because there was a lot of Pearl in the projectionist couples costumes. I'm looking forward to Maxine and Buster Keaton. I think those are a good couples costume this Halloween. The look of Maxine, the production design, the costumes, the makeup, the hair, everything is so good. It seems like a really tricky thing to depict the 80s from where we stand now, without veering into cheesy 80s, campy 80s. But you had some specific like cinematic touchstones from the 80s that you and your crew were thinking of. Some of them that I understand are Brian De Palma films, Hardcore, Debbie Harry, Repo Man. Can you talk a little bit about the trick of walking that line when you're depicting a time like this and getting the look and the vibe and the feel just right? Well, I mean, one thing when you're why I like making period piece movies is, if you make a movie that takes place today, you could just go outside this theater and you could shoot it there because the location looks like today and you're ready to go. And someone could be on their phone and you could do a scene and it could be great, and that's fine. If you want to shoot something that takes place in the 80s, everything outside has to change. And if everything outside has to change, then you have to decide what you're changing it to. So then you have no choice but to like add this very intense creative dimension to making the movie where, okay, well, we need to pick a location that was there in the 80s, and then we need to make it look 80s, and we need to populate it with people who look 80s. So every piece of clothing, every prop, every sign, every product, like everything has to go through a conversation creatively where you decide which color, which thing. And so that's really fun, and that to me is like aesthetically enriching, and that's something that having a hand on every aspect of the movie is why I like doing it. I think it's not just about sort of going out in real life and capturing it, it's about like creating it. And so when you do that though, you also have to be cautious that you're not making like kind of, as you're saying, a pastiche like all by itself. And one way to avoid that is to try to make it as lived in as possible. And like if it's 1985 and you go to your grandparents' house, they do not have furniture from 1985. They have furniture from 1960. And so one way is just to kind of be aware that you don't populate the movie with everything that's popular in the moment the movie takes place, so that it feels more genuine, because if it feels believable and it feels authentic, then the audience kind of stops noticing it, and they're in with the characters, and then they can go along the ride for the movie. And then there's fun flourishes of nostalgia and things like that they can sort of enjoy along the way. But first and foremost, you have to make it like believable. And I think that goes to also how you photograph it. If you photograph it in a very modern way, with like very modern techniques and things like that, it will also kind of rub up against another because you're just not used to seeing that when you think of that era. You're not used to seeing a camera moving a certain way or lights being a certain way and things like that. So to try to be conscious of all that, to really create a time and place is appealing to me, and it's appealing to watch for me. So I'm always after doing that. And as far as like the movies you're talking about, you know, I don't know that there was as many direct references as people always think that there are, but movies of the era that are very rich in style or very rich in their aesthetics or in a time and place. You know, like Hollywood Boulevard in the 80s is a very particular kind of sleazy, it's something that it's not now. And you could find some documentaries with that, or you could find certain movies like Angel or Vice Squad or something like that, and we don't necessarily sit down and say, oh, we're going to make something like that, but it is the time capsule to see what it looks like, to know, you know, oh, you know what, there weren't DeLoreans driving around all the time like people would think. You know, it's like, it's the Pintos from 1970s and things like that, and it's a good way to kind of refresh certainly the crew of the of what the time and place was like.
So you go from shooting X and Pearl back to back in New Zealand in this set in this isolated farmhouse to really seriously expanding the scope of this world and the storytelling and production in Maxine. What kind of, you know, panics did you send your producers into when you delivered the script and they read very specific, very iconic locations like the Universal Backlot, the Psycho House, Hollywood Forever?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I think people's expectations were that it was going to be bigger. And then I think the script came in, and the thing is everybody was very happy with the script. So there wasn't this sort of reaction of, oh no, we have to change something. It was more just like, how can we do it? And really what that meant was, how can we be in all these places and how can we be so efficient? Like for instance, if you're looking at a scene in the movie at any of those locations you mentioned and they are dressed to be 80s, and hopefully they are impressive in some capacity to you, 6 inches outside of the frame, it is the most 2023 it could possibly be. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was very meticulously planned that, look, this is the area that we can do because we can't afford to do beyond that. And that's kind of how I approach the movie, is in a very like specific, we're seeing from here to here, and I will never change my mind. It's just from here to here, but between these two like goalposts, it has to be like perfect. But outside of that, I don't care what's happening. And so that was a thing. It just kind of made it a little bit more manageable because it gave people in the crew like something specific to focus on, rather than feeling like you have to turn all of Hollywood into something else. It was more like you just have to get from this doorway to that doorway, and that's a challenge into itself. But that was the way to deal with the scope of the movie in somewhat of a responsible financial way.
There's a scene involving what, I don't know how many people out there know this word, funicular, a funicular that she takes up to the house, the party house in the hills. That is something that you don't see every day in LA. What inspired like little touches like that are, you know, not something that might be so obvious, but what inspired that one?
When I first moved to LA, I went to a Halloween party at a super wealthy guy's house, and I went to the party, and I checked in, and I was the house was very nice, and there was like hardly anybody there, and it was the lamest party of all time, and it was like so disappointing because like I don't want to say who it was, but it was somebody that I was like, this should be a really good party, and it was very unimpressive. And then as I was getting ready to leave, I ran into someone, and they were like, no, the party's at the other house. And so they sent me down this, like, it was like sort of up in the hills, and they sent me down this staircase, and you can see all of LA, and it's really beautiful, and no one's there. And then you turn a corner, and there's this funicular. And you get in the funicular, and you ride down the funicular to the other house, because the house is on such a steep hill. There's 2 houses that are connected by this. And I rode down there, and then it was an awesome party. And there was a circus, like it was crazy. But that was like one of my early LA stories. I had not lived in LA very long, and like I went to a house in the hills and rode one of those down to like a crazy party. And so that always stuck with me. And then, you know, also in LA, it's just because it's in the hills, historically there were a lot of those, you know, and there's a famous house like the Chemisphere that had one and things like that. And I don't know how many are left in LA. We had to build this one, and it was a project. But yeah, it always stuck with me from that weird Halloween party.
Oh, it's just one of my favorite touches in this film. You know, living in LA, like those of us in this room know, living in LA can be really self-reflexively ridiculous at times, and setting a movie within a movie in the industry really allows you to play so much with that. I'm thinking of what Maxine uses to cut her cocaine with. Thinking of, you know, even the fact that, everybody out there recognize the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that she puts her cigarette butt out on? The idea that Theda Bara's star is actually in real life, like if we go outside right now, if we go to Hollywood right now, which I may not recommend going out right now, but Theda Bara's star is really right next to the Vine Theater and the Deja Vu Showgirls strip club.
That was very good fortune to us because our footprint was very small in Hollywood for as difficult as that was, and it was in the script that she was going to do that. And I was like, okay, we're going to have to send like some other, like the camera somewhere to go find her star. And it was like 10 feet from where we were shooting. It was like the one miracle that happened. But yeah, that was always in there because in Pearl, well, she's sort of one of the original, like, I guess, sex symbols, if you will, from the silent film era, who's sort of like, I think, less thought of now than should be. But also in Pearl, I included on the marquee the Cleopatra movie that she's in, and then the name of the alligator is named after her because Pearl names everything after her favorite movie stars. And so it's kind of a way, there's an unbelievable of like, what do they call it, like Easter eggs in this movie that are referencing things in the other movie. And they're relatively subtle like that. I mean, that one's not that subtle, but they're, that was kind of the interesting thing about writing the third movie and having created a world, or like a universe, as people like to say now. It was, I just decided to lean into it and to try to like historically track these things through the world of these three movies.
Lastly, we're just about out of time, but lastly, I want to ask you about this quote that you open Maxine with, this Bette Davis quote. "In this business, until you're known as a monster, you're not a star." It is such a good lead-in to Maxine's, final chapter. But what was the stroke of brain sparkles that led you to that quote for this?
This is a tricky one to end on also because it's like I don't have a great answer for it because I think to overtalk why I picked it is kind of takes some of the, magic away from it. But it's something I've always been aware of, and I think it sort of represents the feeling, the strange feeling of the movie business. And I think it was like representative of how to kick this movie off and where she's at, Maxine is at, and where she's about to be at, and what it takes to achieve something that's so unlikely to achieve, and whether that quote is, I can't speak for what she actually meant when she said that, and also it's such an interesting quote that I think can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, and so it just felt very representative of the beginning. I have my own reasons about it, but to just generally say it felt representative of the movie that was going to follow, and then to kind of bookend it with the Bette Davis Eyes song felt like a way to really find a full circle conclusion to the story. But it's a really fascinating and like poignant quote, I think, and so that was the way to kick off a Hollywood story in my opinion.
Oh, you think it's true? You're saying it's true? I'm kidding.
You can tell me, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, everybody, for joining us for this Q&A with Ti West.
Thank you guys for coming out.
Pearl Maxine, congrats.
Thank you. You guys are kind of like the first regular audience. I mean, we had one secret screening and then we had a premiere, but this is kind of the first fans of the movie public screening, and so this is very cool. And thank you guys for showing up and filling these theaters and making us feel like we made these movies for a good reason, because it's been very sort of humbling to see all of the appreciation for them, and Mia and I and everybody else have worked very hard, and we're very grateful for all of it, and we hope you like the movie tonight, and we hope you tell your friends to go see it, and hopefully everybody has a really good time at the movies. Thanks.
Thank you.
So, Maxine, your agent tells us you're quite a popular name in adult film and entertainment. Is that correct? I'm curious, did you always want to be in that line of work?
I always wanted to be famous.
If you need to read off the sides we gave you, just go ahead, all right?
I know the lines.
She turns to the camera and, through her trauma, addresses the lens directly.
Name 5 celebrities who got their start in horror movies.
Jamie Lee Curtis, John Travolta, Demi Moore, Brooke Shields, and
Maxine fucking Minx.
I don't like walking out here with that freaking Night Stalker guy on the loose.
The Night Stalker.
Night Stalker?
Night Stalker.
Just
terrorizing Los Angeles.
I can handle myself.
So said every bad girl in Hollywood.
Maxine, I'm the private detective. I had to find you. My employer is a very powerful man. The past ain't finished with you. It's gonna keep knocking at your door.
Tragically, another victim of the Night Stalker.
If I knew 3 people who were murdered in 3 days, I'd be pretty scared. What are you hiding, Maxine?
If I tell you something, we've got confidentiality.
What'd you do?
This is the defining role of your career. Whatever's going on in your life that's interfering with this picture, squash it.
I intend to.
Maxine!
Maxine! Maxine.
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 You're a fucking movie star.